Hey guys, today we're going to talk about cleaning and storing your vegetables. Welcome back to At the Table. Sydney here, joining you from a little bit of a different location in our kitchen. Today we're going to be talking about cleaning and storing that local produce. So a lot of times we get local produce and there are certain things that we can do to A, help it to last longer or to save it for other parts of the year, and B, to clean it properly and make sure that it is ready to eat for us. So what I have today, these are two different things we're going to be using in our recipe. We have tomatoes and sweet potatoes. And a good thing about this is these two items are great for a little bit of a different cleaning style of what we need to do. We've also got some spinach, so if you use herbs or greens often, I'm just showing you guys how to do that. So we don't actually need to use anything on our produce when we're cleaning it. Water and some friction is all that we need. Somewhat similar to our hands. When we're washing our hands, friction is key because friction is part of what helps to kill those germs. So when we're washing our hands, if we're just sitting there, my little niece sometimes will put her hands under the water and she'll just kind of play in the water with soap on her hands. You really want to make sure that you are scrubbing. So really getting that friction. Same thing applies to our fruits and vegetables. We want to make sure that we're applying some friction as we are cleaning those. You don't need vinegar. You don't need a special produce wash or produce rinse. If it makes you feel better about it, sure, go for it, but you don't need it. So really, water and some friction is key. So what I have first is our tomato. And for this, the difference here is that this is going to be softer, right? So compared to our sweet potato. So if you're putting a lot of pressure and too much friction into this tomato as we are cleaning it, you could possibly bruise the outside or the skin. Same applies to some of our fruits that we might rinse off. You don't want to, of course, bruise whatever you're using. So just cold water is fine. You could use warm water if you choose. And you just run it under that, and I do these little circular motions. So very lightly, just going around, doing this light circular motion. And we just want to do that all over the tomato, especially if you're working directly with a farmer who's really getting that produce immediately from where they're growing it. They might have a little bit of excess dirt on it, and that's perfectly okay. But we do want to rinse that off and just make sure we are getting all of that dirt off. So just going around and again, doing those little circular motions, really working around the whole tomato. And that's it. So the tomatoes are good. Next thing that we have is our sweet potato. Now, sweet potatoes grow in the dirt, right? They're grown in the ground versus something that might be grown from a tree or a bush or above ground in general. So you might want to apply a little bit more pressure or use something like a produce brush. This is actually more of a hand brush, but it is great for scrubbing that produce as well. If I don't ever have a brush, I just really get more rough with it. So with a sweet potato or something that a regular potato or turnip or things that are grown in the ground, you want to get a little bit more rough. Anything that has that rough exterior that's going to have a little bit more dirt on it, getting a little bit more aggressive with it. Or if you have a brush, you can take that brush and really scrub. A brush is great if you've got a lot of those little crevices throughout your entire produce. So it gets deeper into those spots to really get anything that's in there out and clean it properly. So you want to move around the whole thing. We'll probably end up cutting the ends off anyways, but giving that good friction with our brush all the way around. That looks pretty good. Rinse out my brush and we're good to go. The last thing that I have here, and this would be great for something, any of your greens or something like berries, blueberries, strawberries, blackberries that you want to rinse. I like to throw them. You can also throw all of your produce in a colander or strainer, but you want to throw it in here, and then you just want to make sure that really it's not this full. This is a little bit too full, because we want to be able to move that around. But spread it out in your colander. If you have one that sprays, kind of like that waterfall spray, that would probably be best. Ours, of course, doesn't do that here, but I just kind of rinse around the whole spinach, move it around, make sure that it gets cleaned thoroughly, and that there's not any pieces that maybe aren't getting touched with the water. The only thing about this, and I wish I would have brought this from home, it's something I forgot, is to use a, I love to use a salad spinner for your greens. That way you don't have a lot of excess water left over on your greens that can make your salads or anything watery. We're actually putting this in a soup today, so it's not a big deal. We'll let it kind of drain a little bit, but if you are using that, you're gonna eat it fresh in a salad. You might want to dry it off or use a salad spinner. They're really cheap. I need to get one for my office here. I just haven't yet, but they're really cheap, really affordable. You can find them pretty much anywhere. So, simple way to clean. All we need is water and our hands, and we are good to go. So we're gonna see you guys back at the cutting board to start chopping some of this stuff up and begin making a peanut stew.
Introducing the Star Communications app. All the tools you need in one convenient location. You can access Watch TV everywhere. Check local channel lineup. Check your Star email. View and pay your Star bill. Report troubles. Use your Star security app. Check your home voicemail. Sign up for Crowd Fiber. Check your Wi-Fi speed. The list keeps going and going. Download for free from the App Store or Google Play.
Hey guys, welcome back. So we've moved on over. We are going to be working on a peanut stew recipe that is from the My Plate Kitchen. It was formerly known as the My Plate Mixing Bowl, or USDA's Mixing Bowl, and they have changed it up a little bit, so now it's called My Plate Kitchen, and it's actually a really beautiful site. They have lots. So if you're ever looking, if you've got local foods that you want to use and you're trying to find recipes to use those in, go to that site. In the search bar, type whatever you're looking for. So if it's okra or figs or sweet potatoes, which is what I did for this recipe today, it will show you all different kinds of recipes, side dishes, main entrees. You can select kind of what style of recipe you're looking for. And it will also tell you the calories, the serving size, gives you all kinds of information, as well as different things that you can do for substitution. So it is a really great option if you're looking for a new place for some recipes. And they all, of course, go along with our My Plate, which is key. So our recipe called for diced tomatoes. Tomatoes are still in season, so of course, I just decided to go the route of using fresh. So instead of canned. You could absolutely use canned if you've got it, but if you have a lot of tomatoes, you're trying to use them up, substitute anytime you have a recipe that calls for canned. The only thing is that, of course, the water content of your fresh is going to be a little bit higher, because even though canned tomatoes are still going to be cooked in some way. So when they're in the canning process, they are going to be cooked. So you will probably have a little bit more of a higher water content with fresh. So just keep that in mind. This is a lot of tomatoes. I was thinking I would do 1 to 2 fresh. And since this was a larger tomato, I think one will actually be perfect. I do have my pot on very low at the moment. So what I'm gonna do is just keep that on low while I chop my sweet potato up. That will also help to get some of that water content out so that it won't water down my soup or stew. Now, if you are trying to store something, like you have a ton of fresh tomatoes and you're trying to store those to use later on, we do canning workshops here at the Extension office, food preservation workshops. So if you are interested in anything like that, I am looking to offer a class coming up in September. So if you're not already on my list for our emails, go ahead and shoot me an email, comment on our page here if you're watching from YouTube, or give us a call at the Extension office and let me know if you want to be added to our mailing list. So we do typically email things out. If you prefer that I mail something, let me know and provide your mailing address. So I'm just going to cut this up into smaller bite-sized pieces. You do want to make sure they're a little bit more evenly cut up. I did not remove the outside. I actually did not peel it, didn't even pay attention. It was supposed to be peeled. It'll be fine. So if you kind of are bothered by that exterior, you could definitely peel this ahead of time, but we're not going to worry about it today. I think it'll taste okay. There are certain things that you cannot can. So just be mindful of that if you are looking more into doing food preservation type stuff. Not everything can be canned. You also can freeze. There's a lot of things we can freeze. And a great way to find out a little bit more about freezing and canning is to go to the National Center for Home Food Preservation. If you just go to Google and search that, you will find their website. That is actually when people call me to ask me food preservation questions, I typically go there first and I check it out, and I can look up questions to what people are looking for. We do recommend with canning that you're using a tested safe recipe. And what that means is that we have the evidence that it has been canned to the proper pressure with the proper amount of acidity, depending on what you're canning, that it has been pressure canned if it needs to be pressure canned. Not everything can be canned in a water bath canner. Some things require a higher temperature that can only be achieved through pressure canning. So if depends on what you're making, but they've got tons of resources on the National Center for Home Food Preservation site, tons of recipes. We also recommend, it's called So Easy to Preserve, and that is through the University of Georgia. And that is a cookbook that you can actually, a recipe book that you can get from University of Georgia. And I think it's actually linked on the National Center for Home Food Preservation's website as well. So just a couple resources for you. We are going to finish up getting our main ingredients into our pot right when you guys get back.
Experiencing slow internet? If you have a fast internet package, the problem is most likely your wireless router. With more devices using Wi-Fi, your wireless router may not be able to deliver the speed and coverage you need. We now have the leading solution to enhance your internet experience. Using small devices in a mesh network, these Wi-Fi appliances cover just about any size home so that all your devices can operate to their fullest potential. Whole home Wi-Fi from Star Communications. Get the most out of your internet connection.
Hey guys, so we have our sweet potatoes and tomatoes in our pot. I just did one large sweet potato, so you want about 2 cups of diced sweet potatoes. We're also gonna do a cup of brown rice, and this is just that instant rice. It is already cooked, so it'll be a lot quicker. Brown rice in particular takes quite a long time to cook, so we just want to make sure that it's cooked in enough time. And then the next thing is about 2 cups of chicken broth. And make sure that when you're buying this, you're looking for that reduced sodium option. So 2 cups of that. And then we have several different spices that we're going to be adding. So what we have here is chop the dehydrated onion. We have ginger, ground ginger, and garlic powder, my fave. So we are doing about 1/3 of a tablespoon of dehydrated onions. I'm just gonna round it up to about 1/2. And then we have 1/2 teaspoon of ginger. I can't quite stick my thing in there. And 1/2 teaspoon of garlic powder. This might be a little bit of extra garlic powder because a big chunk just fell in there. Y'all know I like garlic, so it'll be okay. So then you just want to mix that all around. And then we are going to add just a little bit of salt in there. It's about 1/2 teaspoon. I'm just going to freehand it. You can adjust to taste. So I always like to kind of go moderate or a smaller amount of salt when I'm first adding it, and then adjusting more later on if I need to. You can always, especially if you've got people who are watching their sodium intake, have that available at the table where they can add some salt if they need to. So then we're just going to let it simmer. So I'm going to kind of turn it up a little bit. We don't want it to be at a boil. We just want it to be at a nice kind of low simmer. So once that gets going, it'll be about 10 minutes of it simmering. And then we have a few other ingredients that we're adding. We're adding some peanut butter to that. We're adding peanuts, some milk. With milk, you don't want to put it in when something's gonna get too hot because it can begin to curdle. So that's typically, you might wanna add that towards the end and then let it get warmed up just a little bit. I think coconut milk would actually be a really good substitution for this recipe. If you're looking for something a little bit different, just be mindful of the fat intake for your coconut milk. Coconut is, well, your coconut oils, your coconut milks can be very high in saturated fat. So being mindful of that, we would rather choose more unsaturated fats. I feel like I talk about saturated fat and fat in general a lot in our cooking shows. And I don't want you to have the misconception that we should be avoiding fat. Fats are very healthy for us. They're very good for us. I just try to go the route of getting my fats in things like peanuts and peanut butter and olive oil because they're so good and they have great health benefits for you. So just keep that in mind. And the other thing we're going to be adding, which I'll go ahead and start chopping some of this up, is our spinach. So that spinach that we used earlier. So while we're waiting on our stew to come to a boil, I'll just start to work on this. Now, if you're using more of that fresh spinach, maybe you got from a local grower, it can have those longer stems just from how it's harvested. We'll tend to cut those off. So I just kind of lay them a certain way, and then we'll go back through and we'll just do a rough chop. And I'll go just right down to the bottom of that stem. Now you could definitely throw that into your stew if you want to. It'd be perfectly okay. That's very tender. You can actually eat the stems, unlike some of your other greens that tend to be a little bit thicker stem to where it might be difficult to chew. So spinach would be fine if you want to utilize the whole thing. So when we're storing our different vegetables in the refrigerator, the key there is that our fridge is, well, it depends on what you're actually storing. So some of our vegetables do better if they're out on the counter, and some things do better if they're in the refrigerator. So just keep that in mind. We'll actually take a quick break, and I'll see you guys back to talk a little bit more about where you can store your local vegetables and produce in your home when it's fresh.
After completing my contract, I still have to buy out of it? Come on. Here's your sign.
Switch to the sign that's keeping home secure and customers happy all over the area. Security from Star Communications. We pride ourselves on fair pricing and quick, friendly service every time.
Somebody trying to break into this place?
Security from Star Communications.
Hey guys, welcome back. So I have the rest of our spinach chopped up. This is only about 3 cups of chopped spinach, so I didn't use that whole bunch of spinach. Our stew is looking really good. You do need to put a lid on that for it to simmer. So we'll set that to the side and then just give it a nice stir. And now we're gonna add the rest of our ingredients. So we have about half a cup of peanut butter, and in all honesty, I'm not gonna measure that because it's just really tough to get it back out of the container. So I'm gonna eyeball it. You can use any type of peanut butter that you'd like. I gravitate to the low sodium because I feel like the non-low sodium ones tend to just be way too salty for my taste. So, that can be a personal choice on what you prefer. But we need about half of a cup. So, I'm gonna do like 3 big spoonfuls here. I love peanut butter, so I'm okay if it's a little bit extra peanut buttery. And that should be good. And then, as I said, we also have a little bit of milk, and I've turned our stove all the way down to low. So what you want to do is just help that peanut butter to melt a little bit. So get it towards the bottom of your pot. And if it's on your spoon, just make sure your spoon gets nice and heated. That'll start to soften up the peanut butter so it'll melt and blend into your stew mixture. Okay, and then we have 1 1/4 cups of milk. And so preferably we want to buy the non-fat or the 1% low fat. This is 1%. It is up to you on what you like. This is what my family drinks at home, so that's just, I want to make sure that I'm not buying something that they won't enjoy. I drink skim. I grew up on skim, so I don't mind, but my husband prefers the other. So we'll just mix that all together. And we'll just let that simmer for just a minute to kind of heat up more thoroughly. We also are going to use 1/4 cup of peanuts. So we will use that kind of as our garnish on top of our bowls. And then we are also going to be using a few green onions. Green onions are in season right now. They will be in season through, I believe, the end of September. So if you're looking for something tasty to add as a garnish, I love green onions in quesadillas, in stir fries. You really can't go wrong with them. Stews, obviously, it's very good there. So you have lots of options of what you can do with green onions. And I just feel like they're not quite as intense as regular onions, have more of a milder taste. So if you have any issues with indigestion or onions causing gas or anything like that, bloating, you could absolutely opt for the green onions instead, and they hopefully will help you out with a little bit of that. At least that's what works for me. Everyone's a little bit different, but. So we'll save those for the top as kind of our garnish. Now I mentioned in terms of storing your produce, so think about where you're buying this stuff in the grocery store. So if you were shopping around in the grocery store, where would that produce be? That is where you should store it in your house. So if you are buying tomatoes, they're typically on more of a center aisle, a center stand in the produce section. They're not along the edges in the refrigerated area. So these are better stored on the counter. They will begin to ripen. So some things continue to ripen once picked, some do not. So be mindful of that. If you are growing your own garden, you might want to look into how quickly that produce ripens, should you pick it yet, things like that, because you don't want it to be underripe and never quite get ripe. And you also, if you're picking it really, really ripe and ready, you want to make sure you're using it more quickly. You can store tomatoes in the refrigerator if they're really, really ripe and you need them to last a little bit longer. The key is that your fridge is at that proper temperature, so 41 or below. That usually keeps things in the fridge safety-wise, food safety-wise, for 7 days. However, sometimes quality can degrade. So you think about some of your produce can definitely get more mushy the longer it sits in the fridge. I think about blueberries or blackberries. A lot of our berries tend to get kind of mushy, or they even begin to just slowly dry out. So keep that in mind as well. Potatoes, sweet potatoes, of course, these need to be stored in a cool, dark area. Okra is going to be in the refrigerated section of your grocery store. Store that in the refrigerator. So pay attention to where things are kept in the grocery store as to where you need to store them in your house. So I'm just going to throw this spinach in, and we're going to let it slowly begin to wilt. And that will only take about 2 minutes. But you see how it has this really pretty color. I'm so ready for soup season. It's one of my favorites. I just love the fresh local vegetables that we have available around that time of year. But this is getting us on our way to that type of season. So we're gonna let this wilt down, and then we'll show you guys it all pretty and in a nice bowl with our peanuts and our green onions garnished. If you ever have any questions about storing or cleaning any of your local produce, let me know. And don't forget to visit your NC Farms app to see what you can get available right here in Sampson County or wherever you're watching from. Have a great day.